Today's Erev Chodesh Other Bays, Tafshin Pei Bays, and so today's this week's Shir Hashirim is from Daf Yud Gimel Amidalad until Yud Dalad Amidalad. We'll do the end of the Maimer Hinei Chiyafa Rayasi, and from Ice Bays. Then the second part will have the Maimer, the first part of the first ice of the Maimer called Dodi Hinei Zabah. So in the Maimer before, we learned Hinach Yafa Rayasi, and we learned why. We asked why twice does it say Hinach Yafa, and he spoke about the two Pirushim in Rayasi, one from the term of Parnasasi, my sustainer, and the second one from my beloved, and how they both come together. So Ray's Beis starts. Now it says in another pasuk, Yafa at Rayasi Ketirza, that you are beautiful, my beloved Ketirza. Ketirza, I think, means like the city of Tirza, but I think Tirza here, the Alter Rebbe is going to translate from the term of Ratzon, desire. And he says that the idea here is that there's two levels in Ratzon. There's an idea of desire, which is the way it resides within your mind, within a person's brain in a hidden way. And that means when a person thinks into the greatness of God and His light, so you get aroused and you get born by you a desire in your mind, and as you see in Perek Tes Zayin in Tanya, that and you could do avodah through that, etc. And he calls he says there Kadosh Baruch Hu mitzarfa l'maisa, that even that desire gives it a little bit of wings to lift up your mitzvah, but yet it is still residing within the intellect, and it doesn't spread within the heart mamish, and that's what's called in Hebrew, in Lashon Kodesh, ratzon, desire. And he brings down, this is what's the skull on the head, it's called the ratzon, and he brings this from different places. Look in Maimer Tikva Chodesh about the ratzon ha'elyon, that's higher than even the level of wisdom, and it gets revealed on Rosh Hashanah, which Rosh Hashanah is the head and the skull that actually surrounds the brain. He says the second idea in Ratzon is when the Ratzon gets drawn down and revealed way in the heart, and then it is called the love, or the desire of the heart. In other words, the excitement of the heart, and that is what the translation or the Targum into Aramaic of Ratzon is, which the idea of Targum, he says, is to translate and to bring out and reveal the Lashon Kodesh, the Hebrew tongue, the Hebrew language, the holy language, as it says, if not for the Targum of this pasuk, we wouldn't know what it was saying. And the same way, Ru'usa de Liba, that is the translation of Ratzon, because Ru'usa de Liba, the love of the heart, the desire of the heart, that is the revelation of the desire that's in the mind. Because when the desire gets revealed and it gets drawn down into the heart, that's a greater revelation, that the physical heart is much closer to the body than the brain, as explains there again in Tanya, Perek Tezayin. And that is what it says, Rayasi, is from them, in other words, my beloved, is from the term of beloved and friendship and closeness. This is the idea of Ru'usa de Liba, the closeness of the desire, the love of the heart. And that's what it says, that you are beautiful, my beloved. In other words, the level of belovedness, this Ru'usa de Liba. And like what? So, Yafa at Rayasi, you are beautiful, my beloved, like what? Now comes Kit Tirza, like Tirza. In other words, like the desire that's in the mind. In other words, that when you bring together, you connect, you combine these two desires of the heart and of the mind together, and that's the love of Hashem b'chol levavcha, with all your heart, which it says b'shnei yitzarecha, with both of your inclinations, which means here the inclination of your godly inclination is mainly in your mind. That's where its revelation is. The inclination of your nefesh bahamis, your animal soul, is mainly in your heart. When you bring those both together, you have b'chol levavcha, b'shnei yitzarecha, you have both your hearts. In other words, both of your inclinations, mind and heart together, and that's what it says v'ahavta is twice the gematria. In other words, it's 2 times the numerical value of or, of light, which means you have both of these lights, both of these desires together. And through that which a Jewish people, or the soul, is aroused in mind and heart to be beloved, ketirza, like the Ratzon. In other words, through that you arouse also above the revelation of the supernal desire to come down in this one thought that we mentioned before, through which the entire world is created, which is such a small thing, so to speak, in comparison to God, yet we draw it in through this ratzon down here, we draw Hashem's desire into it. And then it's called Rayasi, my sustainer, my beloved, my sustainer, a shepherd, sustainer. In other words, just like when I talk about a food, that it causes that there should be a spreading and a connection of the soul within the brain, and then it goes down into the heart, and then into all the limbs. The same way it gets drawn down from above, the revelation of the light of Ein Sof, which is like the Ratzon, and it comes down into the wisdom and into Bina, which are the two lovers, the two reyin, that never get separated. And through that, when it gets drawn down the light in the supernal wisdom, then it gets also drawn down this supernal wisdom and this, so to speak, supernal desire that is enclosed within it in every single Jewish soul. And it's just like when you strengthen the brain through food, and then it gets more chayas, more life in it from the soul, and so then it gets drawn down from the brain into all the different limbs of the body, even into the feet, that he has the ability then to lift up his feet, and it stands on his feet, and then also in any type of pain, any type of hurt that there is in the feet, it's felt right away in the brain, the same way it is above. That when you draw down the Ein Sof to come down into the supernal level of wisdom, then it's called Avinu, our Father. Why? Because the supernal wisdom is called Abba, Father, and the tzaddikim are called his sons. As we say, your son to Hashem, your God. And that is like a son, is like a foot of a father, which is the level of the foot. In other words, tzaddikim are the level of the foot. And see what it says in the pasuk V'artzadam Ragli, that when the light of the Ein Sof gets drawn down into supernal thought, then it gets spread and it draws down into the foot as well, as we see that from the thought it gets drawn down into the foot, that the foot goes where the mind wants it to go. And that is only when you have the Ein Sof enclosed within the supernal wisdom, which then he's called our Father, then it also comes down into the foot. And that's why he says, that's why we say, Avinu Makenu Re'enu, our Father, our King, our shepherd, our sustainer. Meaning first it's Avinu and Chachma, then it gets drawn down to Malkeinu, our king, a lower level, and then Re'enu, that even the way we are in our feet, we are sustained and we are all the same. And that is when the Eibusher, when is Hashem called Re'eu, that he's a shepherd, that he sustains the souls, that it gets drawn down from his wisdom and his desire in the souls, which are the level of feet, that it says, open your hand, Peseches Yadecha. And he's translated here Yadecha, meaning Yudecha, which means your Yuds, which Yud refers to the level of Chachmi Ilah, supernal wisdom, and then he sustains to all those, all L'chol Chayrats, and to all those who are living a desired living. So he says that this is that we become, that we bring together the desire of Gashem with the desire of the tzaddikim, and they become one, that they don't have any other desire except what God himself wants. And that's what it says, that the Eibusher also does the desire of those who fear him. That means his desire is also the one with the desire of the tzaddikim. And look in the Maimer Kimcha B'Karchaim, in the idea of Ashkifim and Kachacham min Hashamayim, and bless the people, and the idea of Shamayim there, as we spoke about here, is similar, which is that we say that we sustain our Father that's in heaven. In the Haggah here, he brings another two ideas here. He says, number one, the Rayasi Ketirza, it could also mean that we're talking about the level of Chachma and Bina. And he says, look at the idea of which that's the idea that there's always a little seed of Chachma, of wisdom, of an idea within the chamber of Bina, of understanding, and they will almost always be that way, and they never separate. And that's where it says Vatesha be'esan kashtoi, and esan generally goes on strength, and the idea of, and so be'esan kashtoi, as he said before, misham roya even Yisrael, that where does it come from that there becomes this? So misham daika roya even Yisrael, that through the esan, which is the essence of the soul, the level of chachma ilah, ratzon, as it comes into chachma and bina, that then comes that he becomes the shepherd of the Jewish people, that through that you arouse the drawing down from into chachma and bina, and through that into even Yisrael, as we said. Or we could say that avim shebashamayim, it says before Mefanis and the Jewish people, they sustain Avim Shebashamayim, their Father in heaven, that refers to a level of the light of Chachma, which is in Zah, which Zah is generally called Shemayim. This is another explanation, which is Chesed and Gvura, kindness and severity. And that means that all the worlds are run through the attributes of the Midas. But you have to draw down into them the revelation of the supernal wisdom, in other words, its purpose, its meaning, its reason, as we find the Maimer Masi Lagani. And therefore, this light of this, what's drawing down, is through these two levels that there is in man, which is his desire that's in his mind, and then the ru'usa deliba, the feeling of the heart, which this is mainly in the level of Zah, where the heart is, in the midas, chesed ugvura, and this is the idea, yafa atra yasi ketirza. Okay, so then this is an ice gimel. So now, the meaning of hinach yafa rayasi, that you're beautiful, my beloved, or my sustainer, is that just as down here in the physical world, the main beauty and beauty is when you have a picture and a mara. Mara means a mirror or a picture that has within it three colors together. That's the main beauty and the main tiferes. In other words, bringing together of color. That's when there's three colors together, which are white, red, and green yellow. Green yellow meaning here yarok is a green yellow type color. That when they are together, then it's a beautiful picture and it's very nice. On the other hand, when you have only white itself or red itself, then it's not a complete beauty. And so he says, what does it mean, a beauty of white, the color of white? That means the souls of the Jewish people, which is a level of love and kindness, which is to love Hashem and to cleave to Him, which the level of love is like silver. It says that you thirst for Hashem, the Beis Avicha, which is the level, the color of white. As explained in another place, it's explained that this idea of the natural love that is rooted within every single Jew, which therefore it's considered like a white color because it's an internal, or better said, it's essential color, and it's not a mixed color. It's not an added thing. In other words, most colors, let's say if I were to paint my hand black, so then I would have added black to my hand. But the natural color, nothing you could do about it. That's the natural color. It's not a mixed color. So the same way the natural color is white. And so white refers to the love of Hashem that is natural within the Jew. So either it's the natural love we have, or it is the ava that we said that we have a thirst for Hashem. But either way, so this love is because of the essence of the soul, which is higher than any type of understanding. But after this love and this desire, etc., to Hashem, thereafter you have to lower yourself into the level of the left, which is to push away, which is level of awe, as it says in the Maimar Shmaim Kisi. That means that you have to lift up the world to God, not just bring down the world. Hashem comes down to the world naturally, etc. Then we have to lift ourselves up, which this is the red, or you could say a different way is that we dig into ourselves, as we know the idea of Yitzchak, that it was through digging into himself that he, so to speak, picked up the world through digging his wells. So this is the red color, which are neshamas, which is level of gvura. And these are the two levels of Ram, my beloved, and Pachad Yitzchak, the awe and the fear of Yitzchak. Then there's the third level, the third color, which is the level of green yellow, which is the intermediary between these two opposite colors. And that is the attribute of Yaakov, which is the attribute of mercy, which is to arouse mercy on his soul when you see the greatness of Hashem, how his greatness has no end. And he thinks about how your soul descended from such a high mountain into such a lowly place. And through that you'll break down in mercy, which this mercy is a intermediary between kindness and severity. Because that which you have this mercy and your heart becomes warm, that's like a severity. On the other hand, it's mainly turning and it's pointing to the side, it's swaying to the side of kindness and love. And so this midah, one midah itself, is not beautiful. Only when you have all three together, that is when you could become a walker, a mahalchim, to go from one level and ascend from one level to a higher one. And look also in the Maimarim of Shinacha Keder Harachelim, which also in the explanation of Eidaita Hayoim, that'll gather there all the Adarim, and all these speak about Adarim. Adarim means a flock, which means you have to have, there was flocks. It's not one sheep itself, but a flock of sheep made up of many different ones. And each group has within it many groups. And this is the idea in groupings, there's this ascension that we are able to do to Hashem, which can't be done when it's only alone one midah. And all these midas, they're also in davening, as we find in davening that they were established by the forefathers, which are Avraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, which they are the source of these three midas. And because of this, all these midas of chesed, gvura, and tiferes, now with kind of severity and beauty, are also in our tefillos that were established by our forefathers. And that's where it says that Yaakov, who redeems Avraham, because the midah of love itself, which is the midah of Avraham, without any type of the attribute of mercy that's mixed into it, which is the midah, which is the attribute of Yaakov, it's not considered beautiful. But when there is this combination of the midas, of the attributes in these three midas together, then it is beautiful, and you could go higher and higher without end, as it says also, look what it says in the Maimer Shnecha Keder Harachelim again, and that is when all the midas of chesed, gvura, and tiferes, your love, your fear, and your mercy are together, then you are beautiful, as you find down here in this world and you see in pictures. And this is the first level of beauty, which is the level of nasa, which is very beautiful through that which we do. As we said, the first level of my hinach yafa refers to nasa, that we become rayasi, we are able to sustain God through our avodah down here, through our avsiya, through our actions in love, fear, and mercy, to connect to and to cleave to Hashem and to totally nullify our desire for His desire and totally nullify in our existence. That is the first level of hinach yafa rayasi, that you're beautiful. But then there is a second level of yafa, which that, as we say, which is greater than the first one, than the first beautiful. And that's what our rabbis say, that the one who comes to purify himself, he gets helped tremendously from above. That means that one comes to purify himself and to become holy, and this is the idea of drawing down the supernal attributes, which is the level of Yisrael, the Jew, or the level of Yisrael, that I boast with you. And this is the idea of the Jew, of the Yisrael, meaning the neshama as it is, or the level of Yisrael as it is above. What we say upon it, that kisarisem elikim, that you fought with God, with elikim, and you were victorious. It means something higher even than elikim. And it says kechasim yechayin pe'er, and as a chasim, which we spend many times exposed to the Eibishter, as he wears beauty, or we say l'cha Hashem agdula, it's your greatness, to you Hashem is greatness, and to severity and beauty, meaning that not the midah as we have it down here of our love and our fear, but actually the way it is above, Hashem's love, Hashem's fear. And this Knesset Yisrael, that means that this is, what does it mean Knesset Yisrael? That it receives this beauty from this level of Yisrael from above. And that's the level of Yafa, the second one. And look also what it says, the Marvasom Tzitzis, then he has here a whole long piece, a whole long Hagah, which I'm going to skip because it's only sources and I didn't research them all. So then he says, what it says, that Einecha Yonim. So it says on this Hinach Yafa, it says, you're beautiful, Einecha Yonim, your eyes are like those of a dove. So he says, what does this mean? It's like an example that a pair of doves, which one is male and one is female, and the female receives all of its sustenance from the male. The same way it is also above, that the Eibishter Hashem is like the bride and we are the Jewish people, like a the Eibishter is like the groom, and we down here are like the kala. We are the bride, and that's we're called the receivers from Hashem. And this is just like the doves, that they look one on each other. The same way we're able to look and focus and to see that there's nothing other than Hashem, and He is one, as we said before, and to become totally nullified in our existence until we'll have a total nullification. Batul will nullify our desires. And that's what it says in Yonim, your eyes are like a dove, just like doves. The male and the female, when they look one at each other constantly, and they have pleasure in seeing one of the other, the same way the Jewish people or the Knesset Yisrael. This is in the way of looking in the beauty of the King, and everything you're able to see and focus, that there's nothing other than God, and everything other than everything in life. You should see what? Only that there's nothing other than God. See godliness and nothing else in everything. And that's what it says, Ki'ayin. Then it says, Ki'ayin b'ayin yiru, that eye to eye you will see. So now we'll see that there's now two ways to see. There's the way the male dove sees and the way that the female dove sees. So the first seeing, the first eye, that is the looking from below to above. And the second one is the sustenance that comes from above to below, to see eye to eye, as we say, the same way you came to see godliness, the same way you came to be seen by God. And that's what it says, the eye of Hashem is to those who fear Him, to the ones who thirst or who are yearning for His kindness. And through that, they get saved from the lahatzim avas nafsham, that their souls get saved from death. So he explains, what does this mean? That means that generally it's feet, which means the feet, we said before, the level of tzaddikim. The level of tzaddikim, they go down into the level of maves, that sometimes the sustenance of the level of amaleklam, and has to go down into the worlds, into the klippos, etc. And it says, I place before you today the life and the good, the death and the bad, and you should choose life. And so therefore, we have to go down, the Jewish people have to go down into the physical world. But through that which we have a desire, and we desire God's kindness, then He saves from death our soul. Which, what is our soul? Is a level of Amalekulam. In other words, the light of God that fills the worlds. That we should not end up, that the feet go down, so to speak, as it says, that I washed off my feet, and look what it says on the pasuk verses of Meragloi. And this is what it says, that he gives them life through the hunger. And so he explains here that's not that we survive through the hunger, but actually the hunger is what gives us the life. She said, this is what it says, that not on the bread itself does a person live, which bread goes on the level of Torah. In other words, Torah itself is not what we live off of. But that is the yafa that happens benasa. That when we do what Hashem wants, in other words, just learning Torah is that's nasa. But that's not itself the life, because it's really on the word of Hashem. In other words, it's really not from your avodah that you live, it's actually from the sustenance from above, that which comes to above, which is the second yafa, the yafa of nishma, that we get to hear. In other words, that we hear with our ears what we're saying with our mouth. That means when we're able to appreciate that the words that we're saying of Torah are God's words, not our own words. Or other words, then it's called the Torah, what you're saying out from your own mouth, it's called the Pi Hashem, the words of God, and the words that I put into my mouth, or we say the words that I placed into your mouth, meaning that we're saying the words of Hashem, where it says that our lips respond to God's words. And that's what it says, that this life force that they have is from the level of this hunger itself, that they're hungering and thirsting for God, that itself brings about that they find God within every word, and there's a revelation of godliness within them. And that's also what it says, that when the ones who are hungered and ones who are thirsty, that their souls in it get wrapped. Meaning their souls means, like we said before, level of malakalaman, which is the level of godliness that comes out into the world. What does it mean gets wrapped into it? That's where it says that our souls, they await for God, they search, they await for God. And that's what it says, that he pained you and he starved you, and he gave you the man. And he says, because on every on the word of God, a person survives. In other words, that this is the same idea, that this hungering is what gives us this the hungering and searching for God is what gives us the revelation from above that actually sustains us. And that's what he says, I gave you to eat the man. And you could say also another in the idea of that through the hunger he gives us life. And this idea of Yom Kippur, which it says on that day that you should that you should fast that day, which that is higher than the level of eating, because eating is what we eat food and it turns into blood, and then it becomes external parts of our heart, like at all the different sacrifices on the external altar, that it gets used in the body. But the inner part of the heart, which is higher than any eating, that's the idea that you get life from a place that's entirely higher. That's which is revealed on Yom Kippur, and this is all the idea of Ein Hashem El Yireav, that the eye of Hashem is to his the ones who fear him. So in short, he's saying is at this level of the yonim that we look at the doves, that on the one hand there's the looking of us to Hashem, is also the way Hashem looks back down on us. And this is the real level of nishma, that through that we look at Hashem and we search for him and we try to find him in everything, and we're only looking for him and nothing else externally, just to him himself, with the God himself within every single detail. That brings about that Hashem looks at us and draws down this idea, the true life force, and life-sustaining godliness in ourselves and in our world. Now we'll do the mimer of Kol Doidi Hine Zeba on the Amid Yudalid Amid Beis all the way on the bottom. So it says Kol Doidi Hine Zeba, the voice of my beloved, here he comes. Medalag Alaharim, he is jumping or jumping on the mount on the hills. Mekapetzalag voice, leaping on the mountains. And my beloved is similar to a deer who's jumping. So we have to understand the change of the language. And then when it comes to the harim, to the hill mountains, to the hills, it says medalig, and then by the voice it says mekapetz. Two different words, and we'll see later. I think one is jumping with 1 foot on one foot, and one is jumping 2 feet. Okay. So he said this pasuk is said on the Exodus of Mitzrayim, which then there was the redemption in a way of jumping, meaning that it was supposed to be 400 years, and it jumped to only 210, as it says in the marriage Shir Hashirim on this verse. And to understand all this, so we say in Haggadah, matzazu, this matzah that we eat is for what reason? We say Ashum, it's for the reason that the dough of our fathers did not have time to become leavened until it was revealed upon them, the King of all kings. The king of all kings, the Eibishter himself, Ugalam, and redeemed them. So So this is it doesn't look like a proper, not a good reason. Why? Because the idea of revelation, that this revelation that came upon them of the King of all kings was after midnight. As it says, it was only at midnight when Hashem came and smote all the firstborns and took them out of Mitzrayim. On the other hand, the eating of matzah, which we eat, and the same thing also in Pesach as it was in Egypt, had to be eaten before midnight. Specifically, as it says, that the Pesach is not eaten until midnight. In other words, it must be eaten by midnight. Then I believe here the Alter Rebbe is asking another question. With Pesach, also by Pesach, it says you have to eat it matzahs umrodim, has to be eaten with maror, which after midnight there was no place for maror. They didn't have the maror when they left Egypt. Maror was only before in the matzah they ate before, and we always have to eat it with maror. So it's not similar to the matzah that was after midnight. So to understand all this, our rabbis say that until the world was created, it was only He and His name. Only He and His name. That was only He. It was only He and His name. So we see at the light force of all the worlds that get drawn from the Eibishter, from Hashem, is only a level of light and a ray. It's only a ray from God. As we see, for example, the light of the sun, or the ray of the sun, or the light of a candle. It doesn't affect the essence of the candle at all. And the proof is that even if you'll put a big curtain and a covering that will totally separate in a way that this light cannot shine and cannot spread, still there's no change within the essence of the light or of the sun. The same way above, the godly power that gives life to all the worlds is called light. In other words, why? Because it does not affect the essence of God whatsoever, and doesn't make any change in Him. As it says, Ani Hashem lo shenisi, I am God and I do not change. And it says that you are the one before the world was created, etc. And it's also called this way, that He's also therefore called the level of name. As it says, Yahalu Hashem, praise the name of Hashem. Why a name? Because for example, that a person, that when he says alone, he doesn't need a name. Only that somebody else should call him in a name. That's why he needs it. And it doesn't make any impact. It doesn't change him in his essence whatsoever. The same way also this godly power that gives life to all the worlds is only a level of name, and it does not affect, so to speak, the essence of God. And therefore, it's also called the level of king. Why a king? So, for example, a king on his country, that his essence and his being does not get grasped and doesn't spread within the country whatsoever, or throughout the whole country. Only what does he have in the country? His name itself. That his name, he's called king over everybody in the country. That's the way his whole rule happens. The same way above, that which godliness gives life to all the worlds is only a level of kingship through which he is called the king upon them, that he gives them. That itself is what gives them the life and creates them. That means his name, it's of the blessed be he itself, but his essence and his being is not within any realm of being drawn down or revealed, because he is alone. He is exalted and holy, and you are as before the world was created, after the world was created. So he says in the old term, in the old nusach, in the old passage of this statement, it would say that you were until the world was created, until you created the world, and you were. But now the nusach, this statement has been changed in our davening, and we say actually nivra, until the world wasn't created. Not that you created, but it made it in almost the world. We're talking about not about God creating the world, but that the world came into creation. It was created, and the main thing is like this later version. Because that's the way the pasuk says, the verse says, that you should praise the name of God. Why? Because he commanded and they were created. It doesn't say that he commanded and he created. It says that he commanded and they were automatically created. And the difference between creation the creating of a creation. Sorry, the difference between barasa, creating, lenivra, to creation, it was created, is that because creation sounds like God had to be drawn into it. He has to do something to make it happen. Like a person, when he thinks and he gets involved in something, his essence is also drawn into this thought, right? He can't think about something else at the same time. But by the Eibishter, it's not that way. It doesn't affect his essence whatsoever. It's only like the way of a ray, of a shine itself, and it's as if the world was created by itself. Why? Because it doesn't cause any change whatsoever in the essence of God, heaven forbid. And therefore, it's proper, this version, ad shlei nivra, as long as that before the world was created. There, in the same way, the ray of the sun from the sun, you can't say that the sun shines only when it's drawn, and therefore, in other words, only that automatically there's always shining from the sun, just always happens. So the same way above, when it came up, So just a note here, by the way, that and I'm sorry to go off, but there's also the other side of this that we do say shefa, because this is by choice, as we'll see in a moment. That this is a mashal that the Alter Rebbe is bringing out. The Alter Rebbe is bringing out an example to bring us one perspective that he's going to bring a lesson from. But that is that God doesn't change through this process. But at the same time, there is this the need to say it's by choice, and not like he's saying here by his son, that it's automatic, because you could think automatic means not by choice, but the whole idea of God is that it's by choice, but it's still automatic, and it's still by choice, but it still makes no change within him whatsoever. Okay, so the same way above, that it came when it arose in the desire of God, may he be blessed, his name be blessed, to create the world, he went and he emanated and he drew down from his light a light that does not change, and does not impact his essence at all, only through a way of a light and a ray. And this ray is the source of all the life of the world and the creation of all the worlds. And it's only as if he commanded, and it got created automatically, because they have no connection and no lineage, so to speak, whatsoever to God. It's not relatable back to him. So he said, this is what it says, that your kingship is a kingship of the world. He said, because there's two levels. First level is machuscha, your kingship. And then there's a level of the kingship of all the world. What does it mean, the kingship of all the worlds? That is what he gives life to all the worlds. And that is just, that he gives life to all the worlds, and that's the level of the kingship of God. And there's many worlds. There's Bria, Yitzira, Atzia, as we've spoken about, the world of creation, the world of formation, the world of action. And it says that everything that was called in my name, for my glory, I created, I formed, and I even made, which brasiv, creation goes into the world of Bria, which that's in the world of the souls, which they are in the level, they're like a creation, because a creation means it came something from nothing. As for example, a thought, which is a creation totally from, in other words, it's something from nothing, because before you thought there was no letters at all. And when you and when you thought, then all of a sudden there became letters. The same way the Jewish souls, they came up in the thought of God, and therefore they're called created, because it's a new thing, so to speak. On the other hand, formation, the world of creation, that's the world of the angels, which they are just a form, because they are from the level of the speech. As it says with God's speech, where heaven's created, and with the spirit of his mouth, just like speech. It's just drawn down from the thought, because that which a person thinks is what he speaks, and it's not a something from nothing, rather it's something from something. In other words, that which was before hidden now comes in the thought, now becomes revealed in your speech. And it's only a form and a material, it's only a material and a body, and so the idea of a form and a body, which is a form is the soul, so to speak, and the body is the material. That is the external part, is only a revelation of a potential power, and the tzura, the actual form, is the revelation, and therefore it's called with the name Yetzirah. And that's what it says also Afasisiv, which is a level of the world of action, which is the actual stars and the constellations, and all the worlds. All these worlds, they all get their life force only from the name of Hashem itself, as we say, Kol Nikra B'Shmi, anything called in my name. And that's what all these worlds, all these levels are called Malchus Kolam, the kingship of all the worlds. But then there's a higher level, which is Malchuscha, your kingship, which that is the way of Malchus, which is as it is nullified within the essence of Hashem, so to speak. Just like the example of a ray of the sun. When it's within the sun itself, which there it's not looked upon and has no name whatsoever, only totally nullified in its essence. And you cannot see its light and its ray only when you can see it on earth, but in the sun you cannot see it, and that is what it said before the world was created. He and his name was that, only he and his name. That means it was his name as it was included within his essence. Now look in the Maimer of Tikkup HaChedesh about this, and Shir Hashirim, the Maimer Shir Hashirim, and also in the explanation of the Maimer Shcheira Ani V'Nava, and in those Maimerim he also speaks about this idea of the revelation of Shmoi from the essence of Hashem. So he says, and also what he said, this is what it says, that Hashem revealed upon them by the exodus of Egypt. Melech Malchei Amlachim HaKadosh Baruch Hu was revealed upon them. What does that mean? Melech, king, that's the level of kingship of all the worlds, which is the level of which gives life to all the worlds, the name itself. And then what is Melech Malchei Amlachim, the king of all kings? That is level of Malchuscha, your kingship, as it is within the essence of his name, as he is within himself. Okay? And that's what he says. This is what it says, that he revealed upon them. Then, the level of Malchuscha, which is higher than the evolved worlds, which is the essence of God. And that's what it says. That's why then was the exodus from Egypt, because the idea of Egypt is the idea of boundaries and limitations. Like this physical world has a limitation of 400 years, and even the world of angels is a level of is limited, and it says all the heavenly units bow down to you, which that is a level of self. And even the world of souls, they're also in a limited way. As we see that every tzaddik gets burned from the chuppah, from the canopy of his friend. In other words, that there is differences, and therefore it's limited. And therefore it's all limited things. And there's a limit to how much they can understand. But when it gets revealed upon them, the King of all kings, which that is a level of him and his name, as it is higher than the evolved world. In other words, the essence of Hashem and his being. Then, when out of all limitations, that's the idea of the exodus of Egypt. And look in this idea of the level of exodus of Egypt, and exodus of Egypt, and the Maimor Chesed and the Masla Neshem Lekechem, etc. And we'll continue next week.